Two of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers this week. The first guy is Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos. So Bridgewater in week 1 versus the New York Giants, he had a pretty good game, and he was a recommended ad on the waiver wire video this week from me. Here's Bridgewater. He finished that game at the Giants, 264 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 19 rushing yards. And this week he's got a good matchup at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And right now, if you're in a pinch at the quarterback position, he's still out there in 85% of fantasy leagues is Bridgewater. And we saw the damage Tyrod Taylor did last week to this Jacksonville defense. And I think Bridgewater could have a similar line to like he did at the Giants last week. So right here, he's got a decent offense around him, even though Jerry Jeudy went down with injury in week 1. But I still think he's going to have a good game as Bridgewater. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him get to 225, 250 passing yards with 2 or 3 touchdowns in this ball game. Because Jacksonville, they obviously can't stop no one. I know it's a home game, this one here for Jacksonville. But after what I saw last week, I think Bridgewater definitely could have a big game this week. And he's definitely a guy that I consider a sleeper, and I wouldn't have a problem playing him. The next quarterback that's a sleeper this week's Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Jared Goff in week 1 had a big fantasy day, even though there was a lot of catching up to do in that game where they fell behind by just about 4 touchdowns to the San Francisco 49ers. But Goff had an amazing line trying to get him back in the ball game. 338 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, 14 rushing yards, and 2 two-point conversions. So Goff, he played good football in week 1 here for fantasy purposes. And this is what we're going to see a lot this season with Jared Goff and the Lions, where they're going to be down multiple touchdowns and where they're going to have no choice but to throw the football 45 to 50 times a game. And I think that's going to be the same scenario once again here in week 2 with the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football, where Jared Goff's going to have to drop back 40 or 50 times in this game to try to keep his team in it and try to come back from a bad deficit. But we saw Jameis Winston tear up this Packer defense here in week 1. But I don't see a scenario where the Lions are going to be leading a lot and they're not going to have to throw the football. So right here, I think Jared Goff could be a sleeper quarterback, and especially in 2 quarterback leagues. And the final quarterback I consider a sleeper this week's Mac Jones of the New England Patriots. So Mac Jones made his debut, obviously, the rookie, in week 1 versus the Miami Dolphins. And he had a decent game, 281 passing yards and a touchdown in that one with no interception. So here at the Jets, we'll see what he could do in week 1. But I like both defenses as decent plays this week here. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game once again, like we saw last week with Miami and New England. But Mac Jones, he still had a 17-point fantasy day last week, and I think he could push it to 20 to the 23 range, and that's good for 2 quarterback leagues, or that's good for 16-team leagues if you need a quarterback. So right here, Mac Jones was a considered ad as well on the wire this week, and he's got a quarterback I have as a sleeper. So that's a few quarterbacks that I think could be good sleeping options here in week 2 of the fantasy football season.